Oftentimes, people will talk about a fungicide decision starting with scouting. What I find after a decade of looking at cornfields is that I often scout and make a decision that I wish I would have changed in the past. So I'll walk into a field at tassel time and find that the leaves are really clean and there's no lesions in there. And then you go back weeks later and you find that the disease is developed and that there's a lot there. And looking back, you probably should have made a decision to treat. So this is more of a function of the disease getting in the plant and taking a little while to blossom up. So I have changed my scouting priority or my fungicide decision making priority to look at more of the conditions in the field. So I want to look at the disease development potential and the yield development potential of my corn. On the disease side for this year, the biggest driver is going to be moisture. So, do we have a lot of moisture around? And not only are we getting quite a bit of rain now, we're getting daily pop up thunderstorms in a lot of areas. But you look at the forecast, like the forecast on the right, and you see every day there's humidity. So, humidity is also going to be a big driver for disease potential. Temperatures also are very conducive for disease development. Most of our corn diseases like it anywhere from 70 to up to 90 degrees or a little more, depending on which disease it is. And once again, you look at the forecast, and we have almost perfect conditions for disease development on a temperature aspect. Maybe the biggest driver for 2021 for the corn in north central Indiana is yield potential. Looking back over all my years of looking at corn, I don't know if I recall a year where we've got such an even canopy with good stands. We just got everything built there to have very high yield potential this year, and I want to do anything I can to protect that grain fill period so that 8 weeks after it pollinates, I want to try to keep them plants going as long as they can, and I think fungicide is going to be an integral part of that. So because our yield potential is high right now, if we keep getting rains, we've got great growing conditions. I really think a fungicide is going to be very beneficial this year. A couple other things when we talk about fungicides that we don't often include in the mix is some of the things that are hard to quantify what the benefit is. So what we have always seen with standability is there's always an improvement in the fall. So a lot of years when we've had down corn fields that were fungicide treated tend to stand quite a bit better. So harvestability is better. You may shave a couple days off harvest because everything's going along good and it's a lot easier to harvest standing corn. So standability definitely is something that plays into the equation when you're deciding to use fungicide or not. Probably the biggest one that no one talks about or very few people talk about is nighttime respiration waste reduction. So basically, you think about a corn plant standing out there, it's soaking up sun and carbon dioxide and building up all these sugars during the day. Well, when darkness comes at night, all plants waste energy. One thing that fungicides have been shown is that they slow down that process. So a cornfield treated with fungicide is actually wasting less energy at night. So we would get these years where we won't have much disease and we'll still see a pretty good return on our fungicide. And I think that's what happens. I think we're slowing down that waste reduction, especially in summers with warm nights. And that's a hidden benefit from having fungicides put on a field. As far as timing, we'll get this question a lot. Really, you can look at the pollination is complete stage for most of your corn diseases. So if I take an ear, husk it back, and shake the ear and see if the silk's detached from it, that will mean that my pollination is complete. So that means we can put fungicide on the field safely. You can actually go a little earlier than that if need be, as long as you're not using any surfactants in there that could possibly mess up the fertilization process. The one disease that you may consider pushing back a little further on is tar spot, which, unfortunately, for most of north central Indiana, is a predominant disease. So, those applications, especially if you're going to try to do a one pass, you may think about pushing it back into the blister stage. Your pollination is complete and we start to get those kernels bubble up. I may want to think about maybe delaying my application maybe a week just to push my protection back in the grain fill. Remember, with fungicides, you want a dual mode of action fungicide, and especially with tar spot, I have not seen a disease or seen a difference in the dual mode of action fungicides. They all seem to give us somewhere around 20 to 25 days of protection, despite what some of the manufacturers say. I don't really see one pop out as a better tar spot fungicide than the others. So just remember to do that dual mode of action and try to get it when pollination is complete. Try to get that timing or maybe a hair later. Additives, a lot of applications get additives put in with them. You can do insecticides. Most of the time, there's not enough insects out there to justify putting the insecticide in. So that would strictly be your call. But if you scout and actually go by the threshold, you'll probably leave the insecticides out. Foliar nutrients, once again, those are hard to quantify whether they're actually paying their way. It's easy to throw them in when you're making the trip. If you have some tissue analysis and you actually see you're short on something, it is an excellent time to add that in. So really, when you look at it additives, you may be just best off applying fungicide alone, depending on how much scouting you've done or how much tissue testing you've done. So to wrap this up for the year, there's big yield potential out there, everyone. I think of all my years, this is a year I really want to protect that. We've got good prices, high disease potential, and big yield potential. So I would think of any year to have a good return on your fungicide investment. I would think that would be this year. So I really want to keep that stay green driven in these plants. A lot of our new hybrids now, or our hybrids in general, really need that stay green to plump them kernels up. So keeping that plant canopy green is going to be accomplished through keeping nitrogen to the plants and keeping disease off the plants. So a fungicide application is going to be critical to drive fungicide yields. So a fairly long video today and a lot of information. So if you have questions, once again, always feel free to reach out with us and have a good day.